Hello and welcome back, everyone. This is Mollie Carmichael with Zonda's Inspirational Leadership series. It's been a while since the last one, but today's interview with Scott Larson, it's one of the best interviews of the series. So you have to listen to the whole thing. For those of you who don't know Scott Larson, he is the definition of inspirational leadership. He leads the country as the CEO of HomeAid with the goal of building a future without homelessness. And I cannot think of a better cause. The stats on homelessness are horrific today. They're at a record high with over 500,000 people nationally experiencing homelessness at least one night of their lives as we look back at the stats for last year. Most people think homelessness is about something far greater, like mental health, and those are huge issues. Drugs, all those things, huge issues. But today, the number one cause is simply a shortage of affordable housing. And for all of us in the home building industry, we have such a huge responsibility in this area. As an example, 74% of very low income renters pay more than 50% of their income on rent today. In addition, high priced areas with high rents, high prices, like California and New York, they lead the pack in homelessness with over 40% of the nation's homelessness sitting right here in our backyard as I sit here in California. It's a huge issue. And for all of us in the home building industry, once again, it's our responsibility to help solve this. And Scott's leading that charge today. I know we at Zonda try to be very involved with HomeAid by supporting them. We have a huge breakfast coming up this Friday in Southern California. If you're in the area, please join us. Scott will be there, but he is one of the greats, and I hope you enjoy hearing his story and his path to leadership. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Scott Larson.
Well, Scott Larson, welcome. You're one of my favorite people, so I'd like to introduce you all to Scott Larson. He's the Chief Executive Officer for HomeAid. I can't thank you enough for doing this, and I can't think of anybody more inspirational either. So this is a neat subject to talk about. So we're going to start off first with you, and I always like to introduce your role and what you do with the company. If you were to describe your day and what you're doing on a daily basis, tell us what you do.
Well, what's interesting, I've been in this role as the CEO for HomeAid on the national level for the last 4.5 years. This is right before COVID began. Before that, I ran the Orange County, the founding affiliate of HomeAid, for 21 years. Those two jobs are extremely different. At the local level, I was involved with project development and entitlement and working with service providers and the architects and being out on the sites and acknowledging the work of the trades and seeing things come out of the ground and battling things before city councils. And that is an exciting place to be. This is a very different role at the national level. And it's not that it's to a degree, quote, corporate, but I'm really looking for, on a daily basis, how do we build capacity and sustainability with our affiliates around the country? That is job one. If there are issues that they're facing, and we have 19 around the country, and they struggle or succeed at different things, in my role, in our national team's role, we're responsible to help navigate those types of things. Then we're looking at new markets, just like people in the home building industry. We're looking at key markets that HomeAid is not in, and how do we strategically align ourselves, because the issues with homelessness are in every major metropolitan area. No. And so how do we step in? The other thing that we're really focusing in on my level is how are we really developing new and leveraging new national relationships both within the building industry and without. There's some strategic alignment that's happening with us that has never been there before. We're getting recognized, and we can talk a little bit about maybe some of those things that's coming out of disasters, but it is placing HomeAid on the map in a national political funders. It's game time. So I'm having to look at things from making sure things are implemented well locally, and then how do we amplify that nationally?
And then strategically, how do you grow?
Very, very strategically, how we grow.
And so for those that are listening to us today, let's step back just for a second too and talk about what exactly does HomeAid do? How does that foundation work? It's obviously geared towards bringing housing to those that need it, but explain a little bit about exactly what HomeAid does and how it works.
And that's a great question, Mollie, because This is the 35th anniversary of HomeAid.
Wow.
So in 1989, a couple of local builders and a local building industry association felt a need to give back to the community, and it was very political.
And who was that?
So it was here in Orange County, but Bob Albertson, who was working with Presley at the time,
Yes.
Bart Hansen, who was with Shantana, there was a handful of others, Larry Webb, who,
I love Larry.
Larry was part of those early days, and they really felt that, rather than sponsoring the American Cancer Society for a golf tournament, how do we do what we do best as a profession to give back?
How can we contribute?
How can we contribute?
Right.
And trust me, they didn't want to run the programs that we were building for. I don't want to run the programs. That's somebody else's job.
Sure.
But
they have a
those-
full-time job and then some, right?
But when you look at a community that is full of not only need, but people who want to fulfill and meet that need, they don't know hardly anything about the built environment and how to get
Sure.
there. They don't know how to navigate their project through an approval process. They don't know how to do it without being taken advantage of by someone in the construction industry. How do you leverage dollars? And when we get that spirit that happened in 1989, and the lights went off and said that's on, and they said that's what we can do, it just placed HomeAid on the map through in-kind donations, skilled labor, skilled expertise through architects, and the work was launched there. And so,
And even just maneuvering through entitlements and
Oh.
working through the jurisdictions.
Correct.
And, finding the land to do some of this,
correct.
right?
And some of the early projects, they had buildings already. And so
Okay.
you might have had a domestic violence shelter, for example,
Okay.
but their building was extremely run down. And that's one of the projects that Larry Webb, and you'll hear him talk about Interval House, that they got involved with. And they completely transformed the face and the look and the feel of that program. So when a woman who is fleeing domestic violence and they show up somewhere, those buildings need to be safe, they need to be secure,
Sure.
they need to be places of dignity and beauty. And that is what this industry does, through the skills and expertise. And I get to have the privilege of marshaling those types of resources and energy now across the nation.
That's amazing. And just to break it down, all of the, explain the layers of housing and services that really are part of HomeAid.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think of the person on the street, one, we don't know how that person got there.
Oh, no.
And it's easy to judge. It's easy to have, today, I was having a bite to eat, and I saw some cardboard leaned up against a tree. I knew that was an encampment. It's easy to think, okay, what did that person do to themselves to get to that spot?
Right.
We can't approach it from that perspective because everyone's journey is so uniquely different and it's multi-layered. So our process in looking at it is, how do we make sure that in the local community there are the tools and resources to move someone beyond that level, whether or not it's a resource center, it could be a food bank,
Sure.
it could be a community center, it could be something for Boys and Girls Club, the variety of different things, but ultimately it needs to lead to some form of housing. It could be emergency, it could be short-term, transitional. Ultimately, it needs to be permanent and affordable. So the breadth of projects that HomeAid is involved with do go everywhere up to what I would call a tax credit project.
Okay.
And we don't quite, occasionally we're looking at some home ownership opportunities, but we're really looking to identify the right projects in a community for another nonprofit and really to excel their program to serve a very specific population in their community.
Well, you know my story.
I do.
I have a very near and dear to my heart, and we aren't going to go there for this story because this is about you, but I love the word you used, respect,
Yep.
dignity. It's without judgment, and everybody has a story, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable. But I want to talk a little bit about you, and
Yeah.
so I want to rewind the clocks here a little bit.
Yep.
And I want to know your story and how you got here. And so tell us a little bit, and we're going to come back to the HomeAid story because it's an amazing story. But I want to go back to how you got here. But tell me sort of how you grew up, where you grew up, a little bit about, as you were a young guy and the things that influenced you and what you loved to do and who was a part of that.
Yep. Well, I'll couch this in a phrase from The Hobbit. It's been an unexpected journey.
True for all of us.
True
though,
for all
right?
of us.
Yes.
So I often reflect back in my journey, it becomes clearer every day. And when you think back, I grew up in Anaheim. My family's from the upper Midwest. My dad took every opportunity to move south and west to get out of the cold.
We're in the Midwest.
Minnesota,
Love it. What part?
the Twin Cities.
I think we could be cousins.
We could be out. You want to go
St.
out and
Paul.
about, out and about in a boat?
Yes,
we
of
can-
course.
we-
I've got over 100 first cousins in St. Paul, right there.
Yeah, so,
Nice.
so I jokingly say, I was conceived in Kansas City, born in Ogden, Utah, and raised in California. So
Nice.
it's been quite a journey. I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and my brothers and I are in communication every day.
That's so cool.
We're like a bunch of women, and with our WhatsApp chat, and we're sending photos and jokes and fun things, but we're very, very tight.
Like your best friends.
They are my best friends.
That's
Yeah.
great. I love that.
So, when you think back to, for me, okay, what did you want to do when you were 15? Okay.
Right.
A lot of times there's a base there. And at the age of 15, when we had moved back to California at one point, I landed a job at a construction supply business. Because every day my dad would come home and say, did you get a job yet? Yeah, he was of that school.
And this is at 15?
This was at 15.
Yeah. I think we had the same father too.
Yeah, exactly. and I ended up working for a construction supply business. And I worked in the yard, stacked block and brick and sold sand and gravel and loaded trucks. And I fell in love with the concept of the building industry and the tools that were there. I then, kind of was going down the path. I loved walking construction sites. I would go out on deliveries, and even on my own, I'd walk through framed houses, and I thought I wanted to be a custom home builder. And
Right.
it was really kind of ingrained in me. I have a faith journey that's interwoven in my younger story, and when that faith journey became alive when I was 18, I went down a completely different path.
Can you share that story?
I did, yeah. So I realized that my faith wasn't real. And through some very close friends, they shared their faith with me, and it became real to me. I was prepared to leave Southern California to go to the furthest place in the state of California that I could get into in college to get away from my father, and that was Humboldt University.
Oh, nice. And beautiful campus.
Right.
Beautiful.
And, but my motivation was completely wrong. So I decided not to go because I realized that there's something different than just running away from this very dysfunctional relationship that I had with my dad at the time. So I went down the path of this in enveloping these relationships that were new to me, this great group of guys. So I went to Cal State Fullerton for 2 years.
Nice.
And I wanted to further develop my faith. And I transferred from Cal State Fullerton to Biola University.
Nice.
And graduated from Biola with a degree in Christian education, thinking that I was going to be in full-time ministry.
I can see that for you, actually.
And what was interesting with it, when I graduated, I had had 2 years of Greek, and many of my friends were going on to seminary. I had an internship at a church in Fallbrook, and I thought, I don't want to be a youth pastor. I don't want to go to seminary and study Hebrew. Greek was hard enough.
Right.
So I'm not going to do that. So when I came back of that internship, I fell back and started to work for a construction supply business. And one thing kind of led to another, but I ended up, seeking another job in a nonprofit Christian-based organization that was tied to education and research, and I was there for about 10 years.
Nice.
But I was struggled with it because I thought, there's more to this journey for me. And I wanted to work for something national. I wanted to work for something humanitarian, and I actually pursued working for the American Red Cross And I did that for 2 years, and almost immediately.
Which chapter?
In San Diego.
Okay.
So when I went to work for the San Diego American Red Cross, almost immediately, I knew that it was not the place that I needed to be.
Okay.
I mean, it was very apparent. But it took 2 years. And a friend of mine called me and said, Scott, I just interviewed for this job. And it's a small nonprofit organization called HomeAid. And she said, I'm not qualified, but with your construction background and your nonprofit background, I think you'd be the perfect fit.
Interesting.
So honestly, Molly, what I said at the time was, if it gets me out of the Red Cross, I'm game. How complex could homeless issues be? I was working with 300 people in San Diego and people internationally. I was going to go work with 3 people. And I said, I'll give it 2 years.
And it's a small team. Let me ask you this, just stepping back for a moment. So you worked in this Christian-based organization. You worked for the Red Cross. Tell me, in both of those organizations, what you were starving for more that you weren't getting, that you really were seeking out.
You know, part of it was the tangible outcome of what I was doing.
I gotcha.
You know, when in the education-based nonprofit that I worked for, it was a lot of head knowledge. It was a lot of
Sure.
You know, very important things, but it was just not. It didn't feed me.
I gotcha.
And the Red Cross was. I thought it might have more, because you know you have blood services, you have emergency services, you have the international work of the Red Cross.
There's
But-
education and emergency response.
Oh
and
yeah,
so much
it was
that
so
they do.
multifaceted.
Sure.
But it was. I just knew that was not where I needed to be.
I gotcha.
And so when I came to HomeAid, everything came together. The aspect that I loved the building industry, that I wanted to be a custom home builder. It's what I'm basically doing now
Sure.
in many aspects. Every
Yes.
project of ours is different. The fact that as we get into projects where it's humanitarian, it's changing communities, the built environment is transforming lives and communities, and it just changed. And for me, I get to work with the best people in the building industry. And to see the skills and talents and passion that they have, and that I get to work with those individuals and to marshal their resources into this, because they don't know how to navigate the journey either.
Sure.
And so we can do that for them. So it's been, like I said, an unexpected journey, and but one that I could not have written the script.
Do you ever sit back and think through just how big the impact it is that you and your team are making, in that it's going to be here hundreds of years from now, and just realizing this isn't just making a difference today, this will impact generations to come?
Yep. You know, and it really is, when I drive by a building or something that we've done, I see and I know the ripple effect that's happened. Yeah, whether or not it's a family that's there for only a short period of time, or if it's permanent housing for someone that's been on this, you know, chronically homeless for over a decade. For example, in Austin, Texas, at Community First Village, the work that we've been able to do is transform that individual's life for the rest of his or her life. And it will just multiply. It'll just do time and time again. And we're careful with who we partner with and we invest in. Nationally and locally, when I did the local work, there were very few organizations that did not thrive and survive and grow. And usually the work that we did put them further on their journey, because you walk up to their facility and it's beautiful. And other people want to invest. Community leaders want to go, okay, this is the homeless shelter.
Right.
And so it has a multiplier effect that I can't even, we count numbers, you know, we can't try to count how many people have been served, but the ultimate impact is exponential. We can't even begin to see the impact over the last 35 years and into the future.
Well, and the numbers that you've served today, but then the numbers that what you're putting into place will serve.
Oh, absolutely.
Is hard to
Correct.
measure, right?
Yep.
Tell me what your biggest challenges are today, and what are your biggest struggles today? And then I also want to hear your greatest rewards. But let's start first with, what are the biggest struggles today in doing this?
Well, you know, when you look at the issue itself, the issue of homelessness, whether or not it's people actually experiencing homelessness or at risk, it is such a complex issue. And people can be, like we were talking about earlier, very dismissive to the concept or even an individual. And you're constantly having to overcome that with the spirit and the tone of there are answers, we want you to partner with us. And fortunately, over the course of the last decade or so, there's been, people realize, particularly having gone through the Great Recession, there were a lot of people that didn't expect to lose their jobs and lost their jobs.
Or lose their home.
And lost their home.
Right.
Or are one paycheck away and they're right there.
Or lose their kids.
Correct. And the fact that when you really sit down and talk to somebody, it's one person away. It's not, 7 steps
Sure.
of Kevin Bacon or whatever that phrase is, but
Right.
it's literally everybody knows somebody that is a close family member, a friend, a coworker, that if people are being transparent, that they are struggling with their housing.
I hate to say this, but I sort of wish that everybody had at least that one person in their life, because I think they wouldn't judge it.
Yeah.
Right, and I think because of my own personal experience too, and you probably have so many, for those of you who don't know someone, I came to Scott like literally in tears over my own personal story, and I would tell you this human being was remarkable, talented, everything you could imagine, probably like everybody listening to this story, and to see his life, and of course at the end lose his life homeless, it's you just can't describe how whole that person once was. And it was just circumstances that he fell into. And so, but I have to believe that is so gratifying for you, for those people you saved.
It really is, but it's one of the interesting things that we have to create the tools for it. We can't come in with a parental perspective of, I know what's right for you.
Oh, trust me, I know that.
We can't come in and say, you've been wrong all these years. We have to create the opportunity for that individual to overcome their circumstances. And it may take years. We have to start with humanity. We have to start with the fact that these are human beings.
Yeah.
And they're on journeys in life that we all are. And so that's one of the biggest challenges. And then when you look at the need, whether or not it's in any urban area, let alone LA, or
Sure.
it's where do you begin? And to a degree, there's criticism, rightfully so, that there's so much money being thrown at the issue and there's not solving solutions, and that's a whole other dialogue that you
Sure.
can get into. But
We could go on. Yeah,
Correct.
exactly.
But on my end, and when I look at the work that HomeAid is doing, they're very project specific and very, what is this project going to do for either a specific population or a specific community? And let's focus on that.
How much is actually the housing side to this, and how much of this is, again, having my own personal story, is mental health? And because there is this dignity and all of this stuff that you have to go in and help to recover, and it's more than recovering the house they lost.
Correct. It is. It's multi-layered. When you look at the stats that are out there from.
I love your stats. You have to quote these.
So, but when you look at the stats nationally, those that we see on the street that are the chronic, that are suffering from mental illness, are in the 20 to 30% range of those that are actually either experiencing homelessness in our community. There's so many people that we don't see that are there. We're not ignoring that 20 to 30%, but the dispelling that we need to dispel the fact that that's everybody.
Well, and I'm not even specifically talking to mental health as in somebody who has a mental health issue. I'm talking to the fact that their whole life has just been wrecked.
Correct.
Let's just talk about those post-recession families that lost everything. We've seen interviews and things like that where people are like, I was just like you and lost my job, lost my mortgage, and I ended up here fully unprepared.
The thing we can't be, that we can't go down the route, and we want to have that, we want to glorify that success story of the person that pulled themselves up by the bootstraps. And
Sure.
we know the movies that are out there.
Of course.
And we want to be inspired by those. But that is really a relatively small portion of the people that can really figure out, and it's that John Wayne American aspect of
Right.
just figure it out.
Right.
That's not how we need to approach this.
Right.
Because that really is, in many aspects, unfair to that individual. Because just get a job. You have no idea if the person
I
has a
can't
driver's
tell you.
license. I mean, have you ever lost your driver's license, Molly?
I
And
have.
The difficulty of getting.
I'm
I mean,
embarrassed, but yes.
I mean, but everybody has. But just
Yes.
think through, how do you get a new driver's license? Or where's your birth certificate?
New driver's license, new birth certificate. I don't have a car. I don't have money. I'm just trying to eat.
Correct. And so it gets down to survival. And,
sure.
And when you look at the intricacy of what needs to happen to unpack that with these individuals, it's like surgery, and it has to be very precise and understand. We have to have the systems as a whole, but you have to approach it. So we can't approach the individuals with a global monolith answer and solution.
I'm going to address a comment that I hear often when it comes to homelessness and things like that, and this one just gets to my very soul, where they will say, "Yeah, but they're all on drugs, and they all started on drugs, and they live this lazy life, and so therefore that's why." And I'm like, that's just not the case.
Yep.
And do drugs happen as a result of their circumstance? All these other things can happen as part of the circumstance, but I know you've got a lot of great statistics on this. What percentage from the work that you've done shows those kinds of things? Is, yes, I just want to be out here because I'm, XYZ.
And there's no denying the fact that there are people that have chosen to live on the streets,
That's true.
okay? And I'm not going to dismiss that.
Right.
The question is, why have they chosen to live on the street?
Well, and
And-
that's my question,
Yeah.
really.
And it really gets back to, what were the circumstances that led them to
That's
be on the
right.
street? The recent point in time count, I participated in my community. That's a national requirement by HUD that every community in late January has to go out and do a census on the streets. So I walked the streets of my community and met a handful of individuals, and the younger ones, those that were in their 20s and 30s, were clearly, okay, you could tell that there was drug issues, you could tell that there were alcohol issues. We walked up, and this is at 5 o'clock in the morning, okay? Because that's when you do the count, because most of the time you can find the people.
Sure.
So I walked up to this individual, we walked up to this individual, because you were with a group, and he was under a tarp, pulled back the tarp, clear as day as you and I are talking right now, lucid, conversational. He's in his 70s. He's been on the streets basically since he was 15, and began to tell his story. Very complicated story. But he found that there were no options from a whole variety of reasons, and people have tried to help. And he goes, this is the option that I can do right now. I'm not an alcoholic, I don't use drugs. And I look at that, because this is January, rain, cold. I think there is a survival factor. The numbers of people that are dying on the streets of our communities every year is going up and up and up, because
Is that because the numbers going up and up?
the numbers are going up, but it's creating more of the crisis with it.
Okay.
And when you look at, from a health and wealth standpoint, living on the streets is no option at any time of the year. I mean, you think you might idealize, okay, let's live in a tent on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
That's still only good for so long. But when you get down to the fact that these individuals, for whatever reasons, the choices have been eliminated in their life.
Yeah.
They don't have an option. And so we can't come in, we're going to redeem that person. We need to really come in, okay, what options are there and for that individual?
What about all of the housing and so forth that we're hearing on TV, where they've built 800 homes here and 1,200 homes here, and part of what we're hearing, or at least that I've heard, is, some of these homeless groups don't want to move into those buildings for one reason or another, and part of it is they built this community, right?
Correct.
And so how does that sort of evolve, and how do you solve for things like that?
Right, and because it gets down to, again, the individual. We need the units. There's no doubt that we need the housing.
Sure.
And those housing can't just be, okay, here's your apartment.
Right.
You're instilling more trauma on a person that has been on the streets with a sense of community, as difficult as it is, by then just isolating them in an apartment on their own.
Well,
And without the there needs to be wraparound services, there needs to be the understanding of community, and really good service agencies. And this type of housing is called permanent supportive housing. It's the ultimate end goal. And you really need skilled operators to understand those dynamics. And many of them that are doing it are being very successful. There are the anecdotal stories that it's not successful, but the retention rate of people staying in units if the programs are there. And then people might fall out, but we need affordable units. We need more and more. They're not cheap because they're tax credit projects, and they're very expensive programs to run. But ultimately, that's the types of answers that, in the continuum of types of housing, that's the end goal of what that is.
and then how do they work to socialize those people?
Yeah.
Because part of it, working, up front and impersonal with this
Yep.
myself, most homeless people or people that are in that circumstance, they believe they're different and better than these other homeless people too.
Well,
right, there's a socialization
Right,
of that.
there's very much a socialization. And one of the key things that is woven into it is making sure that these individuals aren't re-victimized in
Right.
these settings. There's a great book that we distribute to our national staff called When We Walk By. And it's a lot of stories and things like that. And the author tells of a story of a person that chose not to do housing because the community that they were putting them into, it was all the drug use. And he goes, I know that I would fall back. So you can't tee someone
Right.
up for
Absolutely.
failure with
That's
that.
a really good point.
Correct.
That's a really good point.
So do you extract them, put them somewhere else? So we have to view it holistically within HomeAid. I mean, it'd be easy to just keep our head in okay, we're just going to build the building. But the building needs to be thought out. It needs to be designed with trauma-informed design, colors and spaces, and there needs to be that component put into it. And if we're not doing it on mass scale, if we're just doing it in micro aspects, it still could be really impactful in the communities that we're at.
You're doing so much, and there's so much to be proud of, for sure. What are the things as you sort of go through the last couple of years that you're the most proud of, that give you the most gratification?
When I stepped into this national role, COVID happened. And
I remember the day they announced it. I was at that event. I remember that like it was yesterday.
yeah, it was crazy. The thing that I found is that the people that are working through HomeAid really rallied together to figure out how are we going to survive, because what we do is so important. Whether or not it's our
More
national
important
team,
then than ever, right?
yeah, exactly. Whether or not it's our national team or those running the local affiliates, and it was a bonding component for us. So the people that we get to work with that are running our affiliates are just some of the best directors and staff
You do
that
have
are
an
out
neat
there.
team.
So yeah, it's a great group.
I have an excellent team.
Yeah.
I want to give a little bit of glory where glory is deserved. Who are your biggest contributors? And let's start there first. And then I also want to talk about, how do people get involved? I mean, whether you're Mollie Carmichael, an individual, or a big organization. But let's first give a little bit of glory. Who are some of your biggest contributors?
When I look at, from a national builder perspective, when you look at the top 10, 15, 20 builders, the majority of them have been involved with HomeAid in some form or fashion, whether or not nationally or locally. So extremely proud when you kind of go through that. And some have gravitated towards other causes, but we could click off the names. When I look at my executive committee on our national board, Jeff Roos from Lennar is our
Love
national
him.
chair. Lennar is our biggest contributor as far as involved they're involved with virtually every affiliate in the markets that they're in. They're doing projects, they're doing community engagement like diaper drives, they're contributing financially, they're involved with leadership, and And
They're
then
an amazing team. I can't say enough great things about that part of the Lennar experience. They're remarkable.
And they are, and they're not doing it to be, okay, we're better than anybody else, but they
No.
are certainly setting an example.
They're very understated about
Correct.
it, actually.
Correct.
Which makes it even more
Well,
respectable.
and it's been difficult on our end because when we've wanted to elevate it, they've said no.
That's not
Yeah.
why they do it.
That's not why they do it.
I worked for Lennar, and once a quarter, I mean, I can remember them saying, Jeans, tomorrow we're going to go out and paint someone's house or do whatever.
Correct.
But it was always, one, it made me feel proud to work for the company. So for those of you, whether it's Lennar or other organizations, to give back means
Yep.
something to the employees.
Correct.
And it also makes you respect your leaders.
Well, and it's adding that extra value, and you see that part and parcel with Taylor Morrison, with Cheryl Palmer.
For sure.
Cheryl is on our board. She was our past board chair, and it is woven into that company, the culture from her. Mm-hmm. When we're starting new affiliates or their local leadership is on that affiliate board. Bert Silva with Shea Homes
Another great
is Mike Forsum from Lane C.
Awesome.
Looking back on legacy individuals, I already mentioned Larry Webb.
Yes.
And Larry Webb, from the standpoint,
All the greats.
They've been part of it, and it's given the industry those anchors. And when we've got new partners, Wade Journey with his new company.
Oh, nice.
Is now engaged with us. Toll Brothers is engaged with us. We've got
That's fantastic.
many companies that we're looking to engage, and even bridging into new partners, like with AMH,
neat.
the build to rent family. And it's not just the builders, but when we look at a local board or the national board, we need every aspect of the building industry represented, whether or not it's title, whether or not it's insurance, whether or not it's designers, architects, all across the board. And so at the national level, we have it's difficult to engage people. I mean, we do engage people, but it's not like engaging locally. So when people reach out to us, we point them directly back to a local affiliate and say,
That's
okay,
great.
are you involved with your local affiliate, and how do we engage that? And they.
And do you have boards locally in these different places
Yes,
throughout?
correct.
And then you have the macro board, is that how
Correct,
it works?
correct.
Okay.
And how we're set up is it's almost like a franchise model.
Okay.
Every affiliate is an independent entity, and then there's the national entity. So
I got it.
yeah.
So, and I don't mean to keep breaking this down.
No.
But so at the national level and then at the affiliate level, they actually are raising money. That money is then contributed, and then how does that then get into the community? Are you physically building, or how does that all work together,
Right.
or is it just a lot of tentacles out there?
No, and so for example, one of the things that HomeAid Utah is a great example of this.
Okay.
Relatively new affiliate, and they raise. People don't like to say we're raising money for operations, but let me just go down this path for a little bit.
Sure.
It's really important that you have quality people involved and you pay them fairly.
Of course.
So with HomeAid Utah, there is investment that needs to be made in the infrastructure of the affiliate. What has happened is that investment gets leveraged multi-fold. Granted, there's still money that can go to and or through individual projects, but when you're putting in $1,000, the net return on in-kind and on project development is thousands above that. And so you could look directly at the work of HomeAid Utah, and it's a multiplier effect that the dollars that are given to them has really changed the community, because every dollar that we invest, whether or not it's in-kind or actual cash, into a project, it saves that local nonprofit money. They then can use that money that they've saved to go into their program, because we've
Understood.
brought these resources. So if we say we've got $1 million project and we've saved them $500,000, they've got $500,000
that's
to
fantastic.
do something else with, because our average ratio is about 40 cents on the dollar that we're lowering costs. Some projects are 100%, some projects are less, but average, when you look at a project, about 40 cents on the dollar is saved through architecture, through product, through services, through labor. And when we ask a builder to take on a project, First couple things that we ask them, and they should know the drill. You're stepping into this at no profit. So that's right now.
So builders will come in and actually build for you.
Correct.
Okay.
So we'll identify a project in the community for a local service provider, and then we will recruit the builder captain for that project.
Terrific.
And so when we recruit that builder, what we first ask them to do is, okay, this is not a profit center for you. And so that right.
Let me break it to you.
Yeah. So right off the bat, that's what, 5, 7, 10, 15, 20%, whatever their profit margin is, that's off the table.
Sure.
Then we ask them to underwrite their G&A, project management, purchasing agent, design team, entitlement processing. And we begin to whittle away at that cost factor to get to really down what is it that we actually have to pay for. And so through our national suppliers like Sherwin-Williams and Boral or Westlake, which was formerly Boral, companies that are engaged with us on product,
Sure.
GE, we're being able to bring those products either through the builder or through us directly to lower these costs. And
That's
it's just an
fantastic.
an amazing model.
So how do people get involved?
Yep.
If I'm an individual, if I'm an organization, if I'm a home builder, if I'm a building product manufacturer,
Correct.
All of the different kind of audience groups that we have, how do they get involved?
So on our national website, every affiliate, there's a link. So you don't have to hunt and find an affiliate. So you would go to our national homeaid.org website. Every site, when you drill down into the affiliates, should have an opportunity to volunteer. And this is what I want to do. And how do I get engaged? And there's boundless opportunities with each local affiliate in that market.
And what if you don't know? What if you're someone like me that's like, I really want to help.
Yeah.
I want to help, but I just don't know how. How do you do it?
Well, it's going to be connecting with the local director and having a conversation like this and talking about your passions.
And just reaching out.
Correct.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about leadership once again as we sort of wrap this up. What are you looking for in your leaders? What are the key aspects or the key characteristics is probably a better way to say it that you're looking for in your leaders?
Part of it is a balanced life to a degree because nonprofits have a reputation, industries as a whole, but nonprofits of burning their people out. So if someone takes on a role in our organization as a whole, I really want them to see what is their self-care? How are they taking care of themselves? Because if they're not doing that, if they're not balancing that life, then they will not be ultimately beneficial for their team and others around the country.
They'll burn out fast.
And we want to make sure that there's great opportunities, but that's one of the first and foremost things. The other thing is that, someone doesn't need to necessarily know construction because we've got a lot of that. That is a definite benefit.
Yes. You have a lot of
people
minions there, yes.
But do they have a passion for their local community?
Mm-hmm.
When we're recruiting for a director for a new market or if there's been a transition, we don't want someone coming from, I want to live in Southern California, so I'm going to apply for this job from Ohio. We want people to really love their community and know their community and really have the sense of, I'm going to do good in my community. That's really a common part because there's going to be difficult things. There's going to be heartache, but there has to be that passion for their community, the balance and the respect for themselves. And then they can also inspire and lead others because they can't do it all themselves.
I think that's a big part of it. You have a great leader in Seattle, which I've met.
Yes.
We did a selfie and I texted you. There is something about people wanting to work with people that are passionate about what they do and they have an energy, and I want to be a part of that, and so you need a lot of that, I think, in your people too. And he's one of them.
And when we find those gems, it's just,
he's great.
Hey, I've needed to have conversations with him driving home on the 5 freeway from LA. I needed a double shot of espresso, and so said, I just need to call him, and he spent an hour with me on the phone, and it was just the greatest thing to have those types of people in your life that
I like that
know that.
I want to be like a shot of espresso for someone.
Yeah.
That's
Call
a great.
me. Yeah.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, tell me who your inspirational leaders are. I mean, you have so many inspirational people around you, all the people you work with. I mean, there's so much in your life that's just got to feel good, but also, you're charging to help that next person too. I mean, it's a little bit of a, mixed emotion there, right? I mean, you're dealing with struggle, but yet you're making a difference. But
I could look at name drops and different things like that.
Sure.
But you may have recalled that a couple years ago, I had taken a sabbatical, and I walked the Camino de Santiago in the north of Spain.
Oh, I want to do that.
And the person that inspired me for that was Dick Hunsaker.
Really?
And Dick is, he's passed away, but Dick was and is that an anchor for me. I held on to that dream of walking the Camino for a decade after he walked it, and was fortunately able to do that, and I walked in his steps because he and I were the only people that I knew personally that walked some of the portions of the Camino that he did. So
I think sometimes following those passions
Correct.
and those dreams give you the energy to do what you're doing now, right?
So that's someone that people might know here.
Nice.
Personally, it's my brothers. So my three older brothers, they're, as I mentioned, we're part of each other's daily lives. One is a retired business executive. One is a physician. One is a structural engineer that has actually helped out on HomeAid projects, but they're my inspiration.
So tell me this. You don't have to tell me which one, but give me 3 characteristics of those 3 brothers.
Sure.
And what about them are inspirational for you? And why do they bring you so much energy?
So I'll put it out there that I absolutely love being the youngest child. I relish in it.
I'm the youngest of 7.
Yeah. So I love my place in the pecking order. But my oldest brother was and is, he was kind of always an adult. He was a leader. All my brothers, myself included, are Eagle Scouts. And
Of course.
Of course. But my oldest brother, he's always just been that steady, stable leader, calm, he knows what to do. He can lead, and he's got an amazing personal journey himself, which is why he retired from his business, medical issues. But he's just stalwart. He's just steady. My brother Mark, the second one down, is the physician, and he is so passionate about people. He's that second child that kind of broke all the rules and just kind of lived life on the edge. I learned a lot what not to do from him, to be honest. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do that because that was not a good thing in your life. But he is there for me every day.
But passionate, certainly, about everything, I'm sure.
He is the type of doctor that you want in your community. He led his community through COVID as the community development or the community health officer, the toughest 2.5 years of his life. And he just loves what he does.
And I think sometimes we need those people that are willing to draw outside the lines.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That's what we learn from that.
And then my other brother is just he's funny, he's witty, he's just has that wry sense of humor. He's an extreme outdoorsman. He's hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. He's done those types of things. He's always on adventures. He's an engineer's engineer, so you know exactly what you're going to get from him. But each one of them have unique characteristics that the 4 of us blend together.
What do you think they'd say about you? What do you think they would share about your top characteristics, and how do you blend within that mix of 4?
You know that one, I got away with everything.
They always say that about the youngest.
They do.
I don't know that I get that, but
I don't know, but that I care. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
I can tear up really easily.
You know what? You definitely do
Yeah.
care, and I'm glad I got through this with that.
I know.
For sure I'd have a moment where I'd lose it too.
Yeah,
but
I'm on the edge. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I just can't think of a more important place to spend your time. And I know we at Zonda thank you. I know every way we can give you a platform to tell your story, to share how anybody who wants to in this industry be involved. That's what we're here to do. And for any of you who want to get involved, you know HomeAid, please reach out to Scott and his team. Again, I don't think there's any better place to make a difference.